One of the first calls when you get back, I think you're all going to the UK, but when you get back, it's to your local Export Assistance Center. I'll kind of tell you what they did for us and how it played out. We had tried for years to break into the Japanese market. We tried sending emails. We went to industry associations, trade shows. We could not break that market. We finally reached out. I have a representative that works with our account in New York. And I said to her, I said, listen, we cannot get into Japan. She said, have you tried Gold Key? I said, no, we haven't. She said, $700, which in the scheme of things is really insignificant. They talk about cost recovery, but the amount of work that they do for $700 is really, really mind-boggling, especially in a case like our products. We have some pretty niche products that are pretty technical and require a pretty good understanding of the market before you can even make that first phone call to realize who you're going to call. So we got in touch with the Japanese, with the U.S. Embassy in Japan, has a commercial desk. We were assigned actually 2 people, so we had 2 separate Gold Keys running in parallel for 2 product lines. And they set us up a series of appointments. We kind of confirmed with them back and forth over the course of 2.5 days with 6 different potential distributors who were interested in our product. When I say interested, they had already visited some of them. They'd already spoken to them before, sent literature and material to them, and that's sort of the reduced pool from the 20 or 30 or 40 that they reached out to. And then when they had a level of interest that seemed significant enough, they scheduled these appointments. Myself and my SVP of sales flew over. We met with all of these companies. We ended up with 2 separate distributors in different markets who we work with. And last year, our first year of sales in Japan, we did a little over $300,000. And kind of as we kind of came, I kind of got in a taxi to go here, we just got another $150,000 in orders from Japan. Here's a market we did 0 in before. So the U.S. Department of Commerce, for $700, is becoming your salesperson over there. Another example of where that worked. World Cup and the Olympics are coming to Brazil. Very difficult market for us to break. For one, the duties are astronomical. For a dealer to bring in our product, it's almost 100% markup down there. But we know they're building stadiums, they're building infrastructure for the Olympics and the World Cup. That's where we want to be. I spoke to Jeddah, our contact at the Department of Commerce. She contacted the embassy down in Brazil. They said, well, it's interesting that you're calling. We've actually been putting together a list of every architect and every construction company that's working on stadium infrastructure development for these 2 projects. $200, we wrote a check or we paid on credit card, and they provided us with a list of every contact who's now bidding on or working on projects down there. It's invaluable. Next step to that is potentially a Gold Key where we go down and meet with some of them in advance of these projects. So you can't underestimate the amount of value in that, because they have people that are sitting there at their desks in Brazil, and all they are there to do is to help you export to that country. And that goes from country to country to country. I'd say sort of other resource and last resource we've used, I don't know if any of you ever tender on public projects or what your businesses are, but public projects in the U.S. are very different than public projects overseas. Public projects overseas, a lot of times there's cronyism, a lot of times there are people who are involved in influencing other people to choose competitors' products. And the reality is that as a U.S. company who has to meet stringent regulations about sort of anti-bribery and issues like that, we can't compete the way a company from another country might be able to compete. So what do we do there, right? We kind of hope for a level playing field. In our case, some of our projects are $1 million projects. There's a lot of opportunity in some of these countries to take this off the track, even if we have the best product, even if we have the lowest price. We've lost a couple of projects that way. Said to our contact at the Department of Commerce, listen, this has been really troublesome for us. What can we do? They said, well, actually, did you know about the advocacy program? We have an advocacy program where the ambassador in the local country will take up your case and kind of give a call to the Ministry of Sport or Ministry of Municipal Development or whatever it may be and say, by the way, we're watching this tender. It's really important to the U.S. government that there be a fair and even level playing field here. And it's really important that this country who's bidding on it, signature fencing and flooring, be considered very seriously in the process. Now, what does that do? Can it stop anything that's going on kind of behind closed doors? No, but it does put people on notice that the U.S. government is watching. And it makes a big difference. We've got a situation where we're bidding on the National Stadium in Chile. Looks like it's working out well. Bidding on a stadium project in Trinidad. So I would urge you, if you bid on public projects, and you have a company I know that use the advocacy program for solar. to use that program as well. So there's a whole plethora. That's just a couple of examples. But there's a whole bunch of services where they're kind of working for you. I mean, that's what the Foreign Aid Bill funds. So.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to hop over to you, Andrew, but we're running out of time.
No problem. I was going to try and make a cool business point, but I have to put on my lawyer hat for a second and reinforce something Arnon said. I'll come back to the cool business point in a second. But the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is the statute that Arnon's talking about, many U.S. businesses and entrepreneurs don't understand its scope, and its scope is global. Big companies, medium companies, small companies have gotten easily swept up in the web of FCPA violations because they don't know the rules. So there's some good stuff on the web to help guide you through that. Back to the cool business point. Another way that hasn't been mentioned to use some of these great resources that Ryan went through, particularly the USFCS, is as a screen and a filter. You know, BSO syndrome applies to countries too. Who here suffers from BSO syndrome? Come on, you can raise your hand. There's treatment now available. There's therapy, right? Bright, shiny objects. Come on, entrepreneurs and bright, shiny objects. Well, BSO syndrome applies to countries too. I'll have clients that come in and say, you know, I want to be in the BRIC countries. I said, can you even define the 4 BRIC countries? No, but I heard about it from Goldman Sachs, and I want to be in the BRIC countries. You know, because that's what I hear about on CNBC all the time. I said, well, do you know that those 4 BRIC countries could not be more different? A month and a half ago, I'm watching some pundit on CNBC talking about how you got to be in the Middle East and you got to be in Egypt. That's the hot market. Okay? So here we are, a short 45 days later, and there's a lot of volatility. And you have to get used to that. I mean, what was the hot market 45 days ago from this pundit becomes a market that is going through some major social transformation. And if you were unlucky enough as an entrepreneur to put all your chips in that basket 30 days ago, you're suffering right now. And I'm not saying the market won't come back, but there's a lot of uncertainty. And don't be attracted to a particular market just because some pundit or website tells you how great it is. Be attracted to a market because you've worked with Ryan and the USFCS resources to say, hey, in this market, even though it's not the one I thought of first, that's where the greatest demand for my products and services are. And I'll tell you where a lot of U.S. entrepreneurs make a mistake is the markets that look like us. I can't tell you how many clients have gone up to Canada. I mean, Canada, my God, right? Couldn't think of a country more similar to our own. But there's a lot of subtle differences between the U.S. and Canada, and it's in those subtle differences that all the big mistakes are made. So use these resources as a screen and filter to figure out where real demand is, not bright, shiny object demand.
Okay, so we're just going to touch, because we stand between you and lunch, so we're going to touch on what other resources are available to think about financing. I know we have 5 minutes. We're moving along, and we're going to have to run through this quickly. So, yeah. Right, I think maybe you want to
Sure. Yeah, no, just in terms of financing, obviously there's always your venture capital groups, investment banks, but government-wise, there's the Small Business Administration and the EXIM Bank. They don't necessarily do the lending, but they can help provide the lending guarantees. EXIM is also great for, say you were attracted to the bright, shiny object, and you went into Egypt, and right now you're having a tough time collecting on your sales. So they also export credit insurance, where you can actually hedge your bets and basically protect yourself and protect your revenues. So you can still collect, I believe it's about up to 85% on your sales with their insurance. And then there's also groups like OPIC. OPIC works primarily in emerging markets, usually larger infrastructure development projects. But OPIC is a great resource as well, the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. So those are just some of the great government agencies there.